Good evening, I'm Ian Hanomansing. Amid swirling questions about the U.S. president's health, a surprise appearance. That unusual drive-by outside the hospital, and the conflicting messages on treatments and timelines.
The chief and I work side by side, and I think his statement was misconstrued.
Our doctor decodes that press conference and the important clues it revealed. Ontario takes drastic steps to clear the testing backlog.
Once you can't do contact tracing in isolation, you're now essentially flying blind.
And a 5-centimeter needle was found in this woman's spine 16 years after childbirth.
I don't know what damage this could be causing me.
But the hospital says it has no idea how it got there. This is The National. The President of the United States in hospital, infected with coronavirus, leaving us to wonder what might be next. And this, well, it was a surprise. That was Donald Trump today outside Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, paying a visit to his supporters while still battling the virus. This is the third night the president is spending at the hospital. His doctors say Trump is doing okay and could be discharged tomorrow, but their messaging on this has been unclear from the beginning, and that is raising doubts. Susan Ormiston takes us through it all.
With a crowd of his noisy supporters outside, the president inside couldn't resist.
I also think we're going to pay a little surprise.
Teasing on Twitter, just a minute before this. Outside Walter Reed, a drive-by, basking in their support, so much for strict COVID isolation.
The fact of the matter is that he's doing really well.
That's what Trump's doctors want to convey, but Trump has been more ill than they let on, twice requiring oxygen. On Friday, before Marine One flew him to Walter Reed, and again on Saturday. But then his doctor refused to confirm.
Yesterday and today, he was not on oxygen.
So he has not been on it during his COVID treatment?
He's not on oxygen right now.
Today, a walk back.
I was trying to reflect the upbeat attitude that the team, the president, that his course of illness has had. And in doing so, it came off that we were trying to hide something, which wasn't necessarily true.
Imagine Chief of Staff Mark Meadows trying to spin the president's message and his treatment, with growing concerns that Americans aren't getting the full facts.
When there's cover-ups, contradictory statements, even lying about something as vital to the nation's security as the president's health, the nation is severely endangered.
Key questions still unanswered. When did Trump begin to feel ill? Wednesday night or Thursday? And when was his last negative test? The White House refused details.
Again, not giving a detailed readout of his testing.
What do we know? This Rose Garden event a week ago nominating Amy Coney Barrett is looking more and more like a super spreader. At least 7 prominent Republicans now have COVID, all close to the president. And, like today's crowd, few masks, just faith.
And Susan, as you pointed out, one of the unanswered questions, when did Trump begin getting symptoms? And the answer would be important to a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, it's critical to walk back that timeline for contact tracing. Doctors say that his disease progressed so fast from his Thursday positive test, it means that he was ill well before. And you're contagious with COVID in the days before. So how many days? And who was in the president's orbit during that time? A lot of attention on that Rose Garden, but what about the thousands at the rally in Minnesota and the donors who came to his golf club on Thursday? And what about the other meetings on the in the White House and on the grounds? The White House has so far not revealed a lot of those answers, and people say they haven't been contacted by the White House regarding contact tracing. It's another example of a uncoordinated and unclear response here.
Susan Ormiston in Washington tonight. Thanks. So was this scene from last Saturday a super spreading event? Up close, many unmasked, it's unclear. But COVID-19 has now penetrated deep into the Republican elite. The president and First Lady Close advisors, including Kellyanne Conway. There she is with Attorney General Bill Barr. Barr so far has tested negative and is now self-isolating. 3 GOP senators, including Tom Tillis and Mike Lee, also infected, throwing more uncertainty on the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. Barrett herself caught COVID in the summer and may be resistant. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie checked himself into the hospital with COVID. He was helping with Trump's campaign. And the campaign's manager, Bill Stepien, is also sick, along with the Republican Party chair, Ronna McDaniel. 30 days from an election, all of this unprecedented. And all of this having a big effect on the U.S. presidential election campaign. Ellen Morrow has that part of the story.
I'll be back. I think I'll be back soon.
President Trump here earlier this weekend, sick with COVID, eager to campaign.
I look forward to finishing up the campaign the way it was started and the way we've been doing and the kind of numbers that we've been doing. We've been so proud of it.
The president seemingly promising more rallies in the coming weeks, his re-election bid under growing pressure. Not only is Trump's campaign manager, Bill Stepien, also COVID positive, a new poll taken after Trump's diagnosis shows the president 10 points behind Joe Biden with less than a month before Election Day.
As a nation, we're going to defeat this virus, and our campaign is going to defeat this virus.
The Trump campaign is launching Operation MAGA, Make America Great Again, announcing a rally with Vice President Mike Pence later this week, despite calls for Pence to isolate until the president is well. The Trump team also sending out the president's family and other surrogates to campaign and repeat Trump's attacks.
With regard to Joe Biden, I think too often he's used the mask as a prop. Mask is very important, but even if he could be 20, 30 feet away from the nearest person and still have the mask on.
This is not about freedom. It's about patriotism. You wear a mask to protect the person next to you.
While the president's been sidelined, Biden's been on the stump. Last night, attacking Trump for not doing more to get protective gear to essential workers.
If that's not a responsibility of a president in the middle of a crisis, I don't know what in God's name the responsibility is.
Tomorrow, Biden will be in Florida, a crucial swing state, for a town hall broadcast live on primetime TV as the Trump campaign looks on. Knowing each day the president can't campaign is another day closer to the election with Trump the underdog.
Ellen, we know some Republican lawmakers have tested positive for the virus. Take us through the potential wider impact of that.
Well, if you think back to this time last week, Ian, it seemed almost certain that Amy Coney Barrett, President Trump's Supreme Court nominee, would be confirmed before Election Day, a last-minute victory for the president. But Coney Barrett's quick confirmation is somewhat precarious now, with 3 Republican senators testing positive. If they can't be on Capitol Hill, it makes this process more difficult, especially with the president wanting it done before the election.
And then there are the debates.
That's right. The vice presidential debate is on Wednesday between Kamala Harris and Vice President Mike Pence. They will be 12 feet apart at the request of the Biden campaign, given those positive tests out of the White House. But at this point, it's incredibly unclear whether the next presidential debate between President Trump and Joe Biden will go ahead.
All right, Ellen, thank you.
You're welcome.
So this is Trump's 3rd night here at Walter Reed Medical Center, and still not clear for those outside of the hospital just how sick the president is. The White House and Trump's doctors leaving a lot of unanswered questions.
As with any illness, there are frequent ups and downs over the course.
The big question today about Trump's lungs.
What do the X-rays and the CT scans show? Are there signs of pneumonia? Are there signs of lung involvement?
There's some expected findings, but nothing of any major clinical concern.
So what are those expected findings? Plenty of questions.
What are the expected findings on his lungs?
But no answer.
That's it. Thank you, folks.
Dr. Conley, on his lung scans.
So what could it mean? We'll put that to a former assistant U.S. Surgeon General a little later. And while his might be the highest profile case, a reminder that Donald Trump is just one of millions of Americans who have caught this virus. Confirmed U.S. cases now top 7.4 million. More than 209,000 people have died. While COVID-19 may be slowly on the rise again in the United States, in parts of Canada, concern and no sign that things are getting better. At least 80% of the country's daily new cases are now in Ontario and Quebec, Average daily new cases in Quebec are just shy now of the record set in the height of the first wave. And while Ontario is facing a less extreme situation in terms of the sheer number of infections, its second wave is worse than the first. So with cases climbing, why is Ontario temporarily pulling back on testing and contact tracing? Lorenda Redekop has the answer and the challenge ahead.
A much shorter line for testing today. Across Ontario, COVID tests are now by appointment only.
This is so much better, so much better, yeah. And it was so nice to be able to book a spot, and especially when you have a little one.
But there's confusion. The province just announced the change on Friday afternoon, and today some testing centers are closed. This couple didn't have an appointment and gets turned away. The province wants to end the hours of waiting at testing centers and cut the backlog at labs. That's now at almost 79,000.
Julie speaking.
Toronto Public Health is now putting contact tracing on hold, except for congregate settings like schools, hospitals, and nursing homes. Even with 1,000 staff, they can't keep up.
The system is overwhelmed right now. The number of cases and outbreaks expanding throughout our city requires more immediate interventions, and if not, we're headed towards more severe lockdowns.
The longer delays in testing means tracing starts later and becomes less effective.
If we have 300 cases a day, that generates, let's say, 3,000 new contacts. And it's a very laborious process to track all those people down and then touch base with them every day.
Once you can't do contact tracing in isolation, you're now essentially flying blind. And now we're in a situation where we may have to go down into another lockdown type situation to get things back under control.
This doctor supports a targeted shutdown for Ontario's hotspots, to close indoor dining at restaurants and shut banquet halls and gyms for 28 days.
The downstream effect of all of this that we thankfully haven't seen yet is an explosion of hospitalizations. We still have time to prevent that, but we do have to act very quickly.
The Ontario government says it's giving more help with contact tracing, hiring hundreds of staff over the coming weeks. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Let's bring in infectious disease specialist Dr. Isaac Bogosh, who is in Toronto. And Dr. Bogosh, first of all, your reaction to the changes to testing in Ontario.
Well, on the one hand, there's going to be some positives associated with it. It'll probably help with the backlog. And it's certainly a more efficient way to use the limited resources that we have to really ensure that people who have symptoms or exposures or risk factors for COVID-19 to really ensure that they get a test. But of course, there's no free lunch, and there will be some detriment to this. It might turn people away that will otherwise would have come forward for testing. It might raise additional barriers to testing for people in marginalized communities that are disproportionately impacted by this virus. And it might not truly reflect the numbers of new cases that we're actually seeing in Ontario by turning these people away. So there's some pros and there's clearly some cons associated with it.
We have about 30 seconds left. I was watching that very sobering news conference from officials in Toronto on Friday. How dire is the COVID situation in your city?
Yeah, certainly Dr. Eileen Davila painted a pretty dire picture. We're really at a turning point here in Toronto and the GTA, and we really have to turn the corner quickly and get these cases under control. She's calling for more strict measures, and I certainly believe that many people would agree that that is the right approach to do to get this under control, because the current measures don't seem to be working.
All right, Dr. Bogosh, as always, thank you.
Take care.
As we mentioned, Quebec has even more cases, a curve arcing dangerously high, and more restrictions on the way. According to a public health document obtained by Radio-Canada, the province could be suspending all team and contact sports in the province's red zones. Quebec's premier said an announcement on schools and sports is coming tomorrow. The Green Party has made Canadian political history. It has the first black leader of any federal party, Toronto lawyer Annamie Paul. Now she faces several new challenges, which, as David Thurton tells us, includes getting elected.
You have matched a leader to the challenges of this time.
Annamie Paul says she's the right leader for the Greens, and the Green Party is the right one to lead Canada.
We are the party for this moment.
Paul takes over from outgoing leader Elizabeth May. This new political face from Toronto has spent years working in the nonprofit sector here at home and in Europe. Paul is fully bilingual and is promising to advance daring policies that other parties haven't delivered on.
Whether we are talking about long-term care reform, universal pharmacare, a guaranteed livable income, the Green Party blazes the paths that other parties follow.
But she takes over a party that has been unable to blaze a path to electoral relevance in a packed political field.
I think the challenge for the party today remains, what does it stand for, and how does it compete with a crowded group of parties on the center-left?
And being all things to all center-left voters might alienate some within her party's grassroots, who almost elected a more activist leader.
People are upset in this country, and they want to see that problem of extreme wealth dealt with. They want to see the problem of militarism dealt with. They want to demilitarize. They want less money spent on the military.
Now, a political battle within the Greens has ended. Pratik Awasthi, the party's executive director, has resigned. He was the subject of several complaints reported by CBC News. In a statement released by the party, Awasthi said, quote, "I recognize that allegations against me, while untrue, are a distraction to the work of the party." He also says he accomplished his goal, transitioning to a new leader. His departure clears the way for Paul to face another hurdle, becoming an MP. Paul is running in the Toronto Centre by-election, a seat that's a Liberal stronghold. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
And I'll chat with Annamie Paul about the future of the Greens and the challenges the party faces coming up in about 20 minutes. Today, California reached a new milestone, a fire season that's been historic for all the wrong reasons.
That we made here is gone.
Wildfires have now burned more than 6,200 square miles, more than double the state's record for a single year. That's an area the size of Connecticut. Numerous studies say climate change is a major factor in the size and intensity of the fires.
It's never appropriate to share a word like that, no matter the context.
Calgary's Catholic School Board has apologized after a recording surfaced of a principal using the N-word in a discussion with a group of black students. 4 students were suspended for recording the principal without her knowledge and then posting it online. Their actions violated the school's code of conduct. Quebec has called a public inquiry into the treatment of an Indigenous woman, the treatment that she suffered in hospital during the final hours of her life. The announcement came on a weekend that saw a surge of public disapproval, and not just in Quebec. Anthony Nerestant shows us that.
If the human wave, grows and remains strong enough, eventually we'll be able to knock down those walls, at the political level.
Public outrage in Quebec this weekend after an Indigenous woman went public with her deathbed humiliation. Joyce Echequan recorded herself last Monday during a hospital stay in Joliette, north of Montreal. You can hear staff making racist remarks and calling the Atikamekw woman stupid. A nurse and an orderly have since been fired, but the video sparked an outcry that led to yesterday's protest in Montreal that drew thousands. Justice! Fresh off organizing that protest, Nagousset says the government's public inquiry into Echequan's death is an important victory.
Because it's not an inquiry on everyone, it's on one specific case that is making an example, a concrete example of why systemic racism is so wrong.
In a statement, the Atikamekw Council of Manawan said that, along with Echequan's family, it welcomes the public inquiry. The council says community members had already spoken out about the racism and abuse they experienced at Joliette Hospital, but that nothing has changed.
I would really like the protests to continue every single day in every different province.
Although it was not as big of a turnout, today people gathered in Toronto.
I think I have seen it all in the over 30 years of doing this work, and then something like this happened.
In a statement today, Premier François Legault said it's his government's duty to ensure everyone is treated equally, but he stopped short of doing what many say he must do, acknowledge that systemic racism exists in Quebec. Anthony Nerestan, CBC News, Montreal.
Now to the story of a medical error taking years to discover, and only after the patient was in too much pain to ignore. How could someone end up with a 5-centimeter needle in their spine? Rosa Marcatelli from our Go Public team has that story.
When the pain started in her shoulder and right leg 2 years ago, Giovanna Ippolito chalked it up to getting older, until an X-ray showed a 5-centimeter long broken needle in the 46-year-old's spine. She believes the needle broke off either during the birth of her son in 2002 or daughter in 2004, when a spinal block and epidurals were done. After all, how else did it get there?
I can't even describe how I feel. Like I said, there's a fear every day.
It took more than a decade to uncover the medical error after staff at the time didn't report it or didn't realize it happened. That discovery was the beginning of a frustrating 2-year battle. Ippolito says hospital officials handed her more than 170 pages of her patient records, then told her there was no record of the needle breaking, so there's nothing they could or would do. The College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario can't launch an official investigation because it's unclear which doctor is responsible. And a lawyer told Ippolito malpractice cases are nearly impossible to win in Canada.
I got zero accountability.
Ippolito just wants answers, but says getting them seems hopeless. Ippolito is one of more than 130,000 Canadians hurt by the medical system every year. What's needed, say advocates, is a new way of dealing with these situations, a no-fault compensation system like they have in New Zealand, France, and other places, where patients are compensated quickly and fairly without having to go to court.
I think we have a lot of work to do in Canada to change the way our system works, stop with the finger pointing, get no-fault insurance in place.
The hospital in Ippolito's case wouldn't talk about her situation specifically, citing privacy concerns. Generally, it says its processes include case reviews and are accompanied by open discussion with patients, families, and/or caregivers as it relates to complaints about medical errors. Ippolito says that didn't happen for her. Now it's her future she's worried about.
I don't know what damage this could be causing me either today or for the long haul. So it just is, it's a feeling of fear, a feeling of the unknown.
That needle is there to stay. Doctors say it's too risky to remove. Rosa Marcatelli, CBC News, Go Public.
Our Go Public stories come from you, so if you have a tip for Rosa and the team to investigate, send an email to gopublic@cbc.ca. We have more special coverage of our top story just ahead.
The chief and I work side by side, and I think his statement was misconstrued.
There's still plenty of questions about the president's health. Up next, making sense of the messaging coming from American officials.
There's a determination of the team that we initiate dexamethasone.
Decoding the doctors. What can the treatment tell us about his condition? Plus my interview with the new leader of the Green Party. Annamie on her groundbreaking election, her plans to grow the Greens and get herself a seat in Parliament. Plus cross-border canoodling in the time of COVID.
I fell in love with her, you know, so, and I knew that she was one.
We're back right after this. For several days now, there have been contradictions and confusion around just how sick the U.S. president is. Here's what we do know. Trump did have a high fever on Friday when he was still at the White House. There have been at least 2 incidents where Trump's oxygen level dropped, and he was given supplemental oxygen at least once. That fact admitted yesterday by his doctors.
I was trying to reflect the upbeat attitude that the team, the president, that his course of illness has had.
Trump has received 3 different treatments over the past 3 days: an experimental antibody cocktail, an antiviral drug, and a steroid typically used in severe cases of COVID-19. Today, Trump's doctors said he is improving.
He has remained without fever since Friday morning. His vital signs are stable.
Still, they remain vague on just how low his blood oxygen level dropped and whether there is lung damage. So to get a sense of what that care looks like and what we can try to understand from decoding his doctor's news conferences, let's turn again to Dr. Ali Khan, former Assistant U.S. Surgeon General. He joins us from Omaha, Nebraska. And Doctor, thanks for joining us again.
Thank you. Good evening, Ian, and thanks for the opportunity.
So slowly, we got a little bit more information on Saturday and especially today from the doctors. Based on that, what is your sense of the state of the president's health?
Thanks, Ian. That's a good question. I think your earlier phrase about decoding was well framed because it's not really clear that we have all the information on when the president became ill, first had his symptoms, first was tested. But from what we have been presented, it appears that he has moderate disease. He had a decrease in his oxygenation level. He required hospitalization, which is what's happening right now, and has been treated with the 3 optimal drugs that he could be given, including dexamethasone, which is for people who have required oxygen.
Yeah, so let me ask you about that, because I've heard some analysis today where people are saying, again, trying to do this decoding, that kind of by definition to administer that to him suggests a fairly, I don't know if severe is the word, but what does it tell you about the level of COVID infection that he may have?
So I would probably use the word moderate, at least moderate. I mean, from what we can tell, he's not currently on oxygen, he's not ventilated, he's not in an ICU, but he must have had moderate disease for them to make a decision to start him on dexamethasone.
And he's also been given, we're told, an experimental therapy. I've heard some doctors from the United States saying that is not something that would be available to them. And again, do you think that's a sign of kind of pulling out all the stops when it comes to the president, and or you have a fairly, at least moderate case, and so you need to use everything you could possibly use?
So the use of dexamethasone is approved in the United States and worldwide right now, so that makes complete sense. The same thing for remdesivir, which is an antiviral drug we give early in the illness. That's also approved in the U.S. It doesn't save lives, but it may prolong, it may decrease the illness, and you may get to go home a couple of days sooner. The first drug he got, you are quite correct, that's not currently approved in the United States. It's still experimental, but it's the equivalent of essentially using what would be a plasma, convalescent plasma. So people who've been sick trying to get their really good antibodies, and this product that he got would be a version of that. So, and we believe that this would be a good option in the future for individuals.
We've all seen, I'm sure you have too, the video of him being driven past the hospital. And I want to ask you a question, not as a political comment, but medically, in terms of the potential of spreading the virus. Watching those pictures, does that concern you?
Any person who is infected, acutely infected with COVID, should be in isolation, and strict isolation for 10 days. And that means not exposing anybody else. And that applies to anybody. Worldwide, you know, because you don't want them to infect anybody else.
There are the sort of, let me call them kind of strict health issues. What is his lung function? You know, does he need oxygen? There are all those things. But there's another thing I hear people talk about, at least some people who have moderate to serious COVID symptoms, and that is the impact, they say, on their cognitive function. That I've heard people talk about kind of a COVID fog that they feel sometimes lingering for long after the acute time that they're sick. How concerned should we be when somebody that faces the demands of the president is dealing with COVID and what lingering effects there might be mentally?
So this is a concern actually for everybody, and why I'd like to remind people that death is not the only outcome in this disease, because we do know that there are complications of illness. Most people, so try not to be fear-mongering, most people get better in 2 to 6 weeks, even though at about 3 or 4 weeks, about a third would say that they're not completely better. However, we do know that individuals can have persistent symptoms for months. They're usually sort of fatigue, shortness of breath, and some of them may be so severe that they may have what we call a post-infectious fatigue syndrome. And these people are called long haulers or long COVID. So that's one concern. And then if you look using sophisticated testing, people can have lung damage, they can have heart damage. You talked about the brain fog, they can have confusion and headaches. It's not clear what the long-term implications of these abnormalities in their heart, lung, or brain or kidney may look like. So yes, still unanswered questions in this disease.
Well, what is clear is your analysis, and thank you once again tonight for helping us through that.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Have a lovely evening.
Dr. Ali Khan in Omaha tonight. Up next on The National, my interview with the new leader of the Green Party. After the party failed to deliver a breakthrough last election, what's her plan to grow the Greens? Annamie Paul, right after this. Plus, the lovebird loophole in the U.S.-Canada border ban. I head to Peace Arch Park. That's coming up.
Our new leader will take forward this cause, explain it to Canadians better than I ever could.
A moment for Elizabeth May to pass the torch last night. For 13 years, she was leader of the Green Party of Canada, stepping aside last November. She was the party's first elected member of Parliament and was joined by 2 more MPs in the last federal election. Now the Greens have made history in their choice of leader.
We have done something that has never been done before in Canadian politics.
Annamie Paul is the first Black woman to lead a national federal party. And Annamie Paul joins us tonight from Ottawa. Thank you for being here and congratulations on your win.
Thank you so much.
As I just mentioned, you're a Black Jewish woman, and by being elected leader, that's made history in Canada. How important are those things to you as the new Green leader?
I think, well, they're very important to me, and I believe that they should be important to all people in Canada. Symbolically, you know, I've received calls from all over the country and text messages from people saying what a difference it's made for them in terms of possibilities that they see for themselves and their children in politics. And then from a policy perspective, having diverse leadership really helps to create better public policy. So this is just a huge win for people in Canada every time that it happens.
Now, your party announcing today that the executive director would be stepping down. He had faced complaints about his past conduct and harassment. So what is the state of the party that you are now taking over?
Oh, I really couldn't comment on that. I haven't been doing anything but interviews today. And as you can imagine, contestants were not at all able to participate in any internal party workings. But I'm inheriting a Green Party that has gained 50% in its membership just over the last few months. That has, made a historic decision by electing me to lead it, and that has demonstrated that it has the right policies at the right time, not only with respect to the climate emergency, but also with respect to all of the urgent social needs that we have in Canada.
You have gone through what must be a grueling process to become leader, and you better get ready for the next challenge, that by-election coming up later this month in Toronto Centre. It's going to be a tough race, right? It's a Liberal stronghold, and if you don't win, how hard will it be to lead the party if you're outside the House of Commons?
Well, it is the Liberal stronghold, but I believe that people in Toronto Centre deserve real representation for change. I was born in that riding, and my grandmother was a frontline service worker there. My mother taught in the schools. And as you said, I ran during the last election. There are real urgent needs in that riding in terms of affordability, the opioid crisis, child poverty, and the Liberals have just neglected that riding for a very long time. And I say enough, and I hope that people in the riding will say the same thing. I can lead the Green Party successfully within or without a parliament. We have excellent leadership that's in our caucus. And, I will get in there eventually. I'm hoping to get in there as of October 26th.
We have just 1 minute, and I know this is a question that really deserves many more minutes than that. But a lot of people thought the Greens were going to have a breakthrough in the last election. And I guess in a way they did. 3 MPs elected, but people were hoping for many more. Within a minute, can you tell me what needs to be done differently next time to build on that?
Everything changed when the pandemic hit. And so people are looking and asking themselves, how can we build better? How can we go back to a new normal? Because no one was satisfied with the way things were, and no one wants to go back to the way things were. And so that's the opportunity for Greens to say, take a look at us, take a look at all of the policies we proposed for all these years that would have, had they been in place, really made the difference. And so I think it's time for them to take a look at us and to see that if they're looking for a just, sustainable society and a progressive alternative, it's with the Green Party.
Annamie Paul, a real pleasure speaking with you. Thanks.
It's been a real pleasure. Hope to come back again soon.
Next on The National, I head to a little park on the border where Canadians and Americans can reunite with no quarantine.
So many people have lost hope or have been a little crushed during the pandemic in some way. And for many people, this park is their one hope.
The story of Peace Arch Park, right after this.
Panthers up 14-7. Play action. Bridgewater wide open. It's Bonifant for the touchdown.
After the stadium there was sanitized by robots using powerful ultraviolet lights. Healthcare centers have used this method for nearly a decade, but it's a first for an NFL facility. Two teams were sidelined today. The Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs didn't face the New England Patriots after Patriots star quarterback Cam Newton tested positive over the weekend. That game will be played in the next few days if no one else tests positive. Universities in Canada are starting to crack down on students who ignore social distancing rules. Roughly 1 month into classes, some campuses have seen outbreaks. At Western University in London, Ontario, 100 students have been warned to watch their step. Annamie Johnson shows us why.
A party at Western University last weekend. Smaller than in previous years, but in a pandemic big enough to alarm people.
There were, easily to say, dozens of students wandering around, all in large groups, all unmasked.
This student journalist watched it happen. Some partygoers showed her videos from inside their residences.
At least 30 of them, all unmasked, crammed into residence hallways, jumping up and down, partying and screaming.
100 students at Western are now under academic review, a sort of probation, at a university that's already counted 70 positive COVID-19 cases. In Kingston, Ontario, people are flagging Queen's University's student parties happening off campus. One of them now linked to 5 new cases. Queen's already orders students to stick to their own residence floors. More restrictions could come.
I'm concerned about Thanksgiving, and then later in the month there's a reading week. I'm asking them to consider not having the reading week.
Western maintains that only a small handful of students broke rules, but universities have options for those who keep at it.
There are a range of sanctions that are available to us. They range really from an educational intervention, if we feel that the student would learn through the experience, all the way through to suspension or expulsion if the situation warrants that.
This professor says the punishments shouldn't be too draconian. Her new research suggests the way students live, from communal housing to jobs in the service sector, makes them more likely to spread the virus.
What we want to make sure we're not doing here at Western or in any other community of young people is having them take social activity or parties underground or in basements, behind closed doors, and certainly not in close quarters right now.
For now, Hope Mahood is sticking it out.
Right now, not incredibly safe. I don't feel like I'm fully insulated from the virus.
Stressed but determined to keep reporting on student life at a time when what happens on campus hardly stays on campus. Annamie Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
The pandemic has kept a lot of people apart, including many in the United States who aren't allowed to visit friends and family here. On Friday, the federal government said it was relaxing some of those international rules.
We will create a process to allow extended family members of Canadian citizens and permanent residents to enter the country while respecting quarantine requirements.
This week, the government will release more details about who can qualify, but we already know many people still won't be able to visit unless they can make it to a small park just south of Vancouver. Peace Arch Park straddles the BC-Washington state border, and that's where I went a few days ago to watch as people from 2 countries got together and then at night said goodbye.
How you doing?
This is Cross-Border Love in the Time of COVID, a story of romance growing through a loophole in the U.S.-Canada border ban.
Okay.
Linton Harris is a Canadian, Julie Arps, American. They connected on a dating site in April during the pandemic.
So you had a good day?
Yeah, it was busy.
Unable to cross the border, though they live just a short drive apart, Julie and Linton spent a lot of time on their computers until they found out they could meet here. And that's when online became in love.
After the first couple of weeks or so, I was kind of, I fell in love with her, you know, so, and I knew that she was the one I wanted to have, so.
And I fell in love with him within the first couple of weeks as well. It happened so fast, and we just spent hours, you know, talking about our lives and our families and everything.
On the map, it's black and white. This park is in the United States, but in practice, it's a shade of gray. U.S. Border Patrol allows Canadians to enter the park freely, and when they cross the ditch to go back to Canada, the RCMP simply makes sure they're Canadian residents and not carrying contraband. This makeshift international zone is no secret. Even on what regulars told me was a slow day, there are lots of couples, families, friends from each side of the border getting together. Or wishing they could. Kaylin Ball lives just a few blocks away. Her fiance, Dave, lives in Baltimore. They met long before the pandemic and made those long flights back and forth.
Yeah, so this was on our first date. We went to the Baltimore Aquarium. We just had like the best first date ever.
CBC was there back in July when they got together in the park.
Yeah, I'll travel across the country and sit in a park for 3 or 4 days just to be with you.
Under the new rules announced Friday, long-term couples can get together in Canada, but that still requires a 14-day quarantine. And back in July, Kaylin and Dave weren't sure when that might happen.
It was really hard to say goodbye after that.
Well, I was going to say, what was the goodbye like?
Lots of crying.
Of course, the rules about not crossing the border freely have to do with reducing the spread of COVID. And so we asked people here about that. They say that whether it's maintaining their distance in the park or keeping within small bubbles, they can meet here and do it safely.
Both of us are very careful in our bubbles, in our own communities, and I only see my immediate family, sons and my dad.
My company, we've kind of split shifts, so I basically work by myself, and I don't think I can be more careful than I am now. And apart from Julie, I don't meet anyone else.
We asked the federal health authorities about this quirky exception, but they said, ask the RCMP. The Mounties consider their role here security, checking IDs and bags. And so, this park is where family and friendship has somehow prevailed over the usually stark border rules. So when you look around here, and I know you don't know the people who are here, but as you look at these groups of people, what do you think is going on?
You know, I think so many people have lost hope or have been a little crushed during the pandemic in some way. And for many people, this park is their one hope and their one chance to see the people that they love the most. And, you know, I think that's a really special thing in times when there's not a lot of good news.
Sunset means long goodbyes. It's when the park closes, and that keeps getting earlier. As Julie and Linton waved goodnight, they plan to meet again in a couple of days and wonder when they'll be able to go home together. When we come back, we return to our top story. President Donald Trump is spending his third night in hospital at Walter Reed Medical Center. But his trip outside today to thank those supporters was a clear choice for our moment of the day. Next. This is where we play the moment, usually a light-hearted tale to end the night. But today, one moment stood out among all the others, and it's not light-hearted, but it sure was surprising. Donald Trump knows the power of TV and Twitter, and today, in a show of defiance to COVID-19 and his detractors, he pulled off a theatrical moment. It was a powerful presidential move.
Mr. President! Oh my gosh, I love you!
Wearing a mask enclosed in an SUV with Secret Service in protective gear, this was a signal to the world that while Donald Trump might be down, do not count him out. Just minutes before, from inside the hospital where he's being treated for COVID-19, came the only hint of what was about to happen.
I also think we're going to pay a little surprise to some of the great patriots that we have out on the street.
Those patriots, flag-flying well-wishers who have been gathering for days. Their show of support, perhaps when the president needs it most, today met with a very controversial thank you. And if you spent any time today watching American cable news and the commentators there, and I did, everybody agreed on one thing, and that is the powerful symbolism of that moment. The thing they didn't agree on is what it was symbolic of. And I think they'll continue to debate that through the week. That is the National for Sunday, October the 4th. Good night.